And we're live. Hey everyone, I just released a pretty big video, but I wanted to actually answer questions. So you can always watch that video later. Some of you might want to watch about FastAPI and Airtable. Some of you might not. Maybe you just have some questions. That's actually why I'm here. I haven't done a Q&A in a little while, and I really wanted to jump on at least a little bit. I don't know how long, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30. Maybe you guys won't even see this because I've got that other video premiering at this very moment. It's probably not the best time, but it's getting later for me. So I want to get this in now before I actually was gone. No audio. No audio. Hang on. It says audio here. No audio, everyone. Does anyone have audio? Sound, anyone? Okay, so we do have some people loud and clear. Okay, cool. Because I had to jump to my old mic because this mic, I don't have my sound booster yet. So all of my videos I've been having to do post-production for the sound booster. So that hopefully will be coming very soon. These XLR mics are really nice, but there's a number of things about them that you don't expect. USB mics, you just plug them in and start using them. You know what I mean? Cool. So this is a good question. Google Cloud Platform as a career. Absolutely. So if you want to do cloud engineering or being a cloud solutions architect, this is a really good career, whether it's for Google Cloud or AWS or Azure or all of them. I think about this a lot because networking and how Google Cloud is coming in, it's just fascinating. It's a really good time to being in those things. Something that I saw recently, which was a question I actually wanted to just address, is Django going obsolete? So a lot of you guys know me because of Django. Some of you have asked me this question in the past. I guess it got a little steam on Reddit, and then my buddy Matt over at Just Django was talking about this, so check out his video too. But the thing is, I don't actually think that Django is going obsolete at all. I think it's still a really used platform. But the thing is, the most marketing shiny example of things is like using Kubernetes or using a single page application or all of these other things for API services. And granted, there are a lot of really cool tools, but Django itself is still like a structural backend service that is incredible, very powerful, and very useful. So let me know if you guys have questions. I see that a few of you are on here, and I'm not seeing any questions coming in now. Is it still working? Are we still here? Are we still doing this? Maybe it's because I've got you guys split in too many places. Maybe YouTube doesn't like me premiering a video and going live at the same time. You know what I mean? That's probably not the wisest thing that I did. So yeah, I mean, I'm here to answer your questions if you have any. If not, I can just keep on talking about things that I find pretty fascinating. So this mic right here, let's talk about this thing unless I get some questions. So this mic right here is called an XLR mic, which is technically supposed to be a better mic, right? But the weird thing is it actually picks up really low volume of audio. So I didn't realize that mics did that. I thought that it would just pick up the closest source and then that's how it did it. But then this actually outputs really low audio, which is kind of strange. Oh, cool. Got a couple questions. Cherry Pie. I haven't used Cherry Pie much. Thanks for the question. Cherry Pie is I believe it's a micro framework. It has a lot of interesting things about it. But really there's a lot of projects out there, and all of these projects have different requirements, right? So if a business is coming out and saying like, hey, these are the requirements for what you need to do, Django is often a really good choice for that, right? So if you need user authentication, you need to store data, really good choice. But not always. Something like CherryPy, FastAPI, Flask, a lot of these other ones might be really good choices as well. But I should probably spend more time with CherryPy. Thanks for the question. Is there any way to get AWS S3 without credit card? Not that I'm aware of. Maybe through a university of some kind. That might be the one exception, but you could also try and hit them up. Just contact AWS directly and say, hey, look, I don't have a credit card, but I want to learn. And report back to me. Shoot me a message on Twitter related to that. So cfe.sh/Twitter. Tweet me if you find out any good information on getting AWS without a credit card. That's something I want to know. In Django, can you use Pillow in production? Absolutely. Pillow is the Python image library. You actually have to use it for the image field itself. And that is something you'll probably want to do from time to time. So next one. I use pipenv a lot for dependency management. Yes, pipenv has actually let me down a few times. The built-in Python virtual environment manager is actually that's now my go-to again. Like at one time it was, then I went to pipenv. I thought pipenv had a lot of really good things about it. Poetry is something I haven't used enough to really give a full review of it. I think it is also promising like pipenv was at one point, but I was like convinced once I was using pipenv, I'm like, this is it. This is going to be the best thing. But I've run into a number of roadblocks with it that are just minor things that, maybe it's just some of the version of code that I was using that just got me frustrated with it. And that's pretty much it. But I'll have to check out Poetry more. What's the best platform for learning data structures and algorithms? So you actually use this stuff all the time when you're building projects. So if you're looking for like the literal definition of these things, Wikipedia is a great way to learn the literal definition of them. But you can also look on Google or Python's documentation for these things as well. But algorithms are just like, you can make everyone makes algorithms. So when you write functions that do stuff, that's an algorithm. And data structures is how you kind of move this data around. Obviously, that's just the gist of it. There's a lot more to it than just that. Thanks for the questions. So do I have any tips to succeed as a content creator as a career path? I have a lot of thoughts on it for sure. So one of the things that is challenging is to meet up with the perceived demand that starts to happen, right? So if you get a little bit of traction, you start to feel like you need to continuously create stuff and do it to a mind-numbing pace, right? This will actually lead to really quick burnout. I'm definitely not the only creator that's ever said that, but luckily for me, my creations are about coding, right? So like if I want to take a little bit of time off from actually making videos, I just code some more and do some research with all that. I think that the one thing about it that is really challenging is being consistent, at least for me. So I am inconsistently consistent, right? So I definitely post fairly often, but I don't always do that. Sometimes I have these like sprints or these bursts where I'm posting a ton, and then sometimes I'm not. Now, that's because I'm actually oscillating between posting content and researching software and building my own projects and doing the things that help me come back to then posting more content. But actually, one of the things that's helped a lot is I cleaned up my studio desk environment a lot, and I have a better setup overall that just makes it a lot more conducive for me to just get in and record. But I've been doing this for 8 years, so it's not like I can really tell you what was it like in the early days. The early days was like, wow, I'm getting paid to do this. This is amazing. So I actually avoided working a lot because I had this newfound freedom I didn't have before, which was, it's the middle of the day and I could play some video games. So I'll play some video games, right? I did that a lot in the early days and just like definitely hit a number of walls when I was doing that, and that led to burnout and stuff like that too. But I think one of the key things is to create as much as you feel comfortable in the best quality that you can, while also being dedicated to improving over time. Right. That's, I think, one of the key things in his as a content creator. And then the other side is when you're starting, don't be afraid to just talk to yourself into a camera. Like, that's literally what I'm doing. I realize that you guys are listening and you're live out there somewhere, but I'm literally just talking to myself in the camera right now. Right. So it's kind of weird. Like, I'm in this room by myself talking to myself, but I'm not talking to myself. So that was definitely something that was hard for me to get over in the beginning. But if you're not comfortable with that, if you're not comfortable being physically on camera, doing voiceover is great. One of the things I should have done a long time ago was invest in better audio. What you hear now is probably fine, but a mic like this, an XLR mic, much, much better. So I'd also recommend that. Let me know if you want to talk about that more. I'm happy to chat more about that one. How long does it take to become a Django developer? This is different for everyone, so I can't give a blanket answer to that. It also depends on how much you want it. What is something new that you want to get more into or excited about? Oh man, there's so many things that I want to get more into. It's not always new stuff either. So networking, being a network engineer, like knowing more about how the server centers and data centers work, like technically wiring the hardware, all the electronics that go into it, like actually being able to look at a board and be like, I know this chip, and I know how this is wired and stuff like that. That is fascinating to me. I would love to spend more time with that. As far as software is concerned, machine learning is definitely one of those things. I want to spend a lot more time in machine learning, but I think that I have a lot more ground to go with a lot of the just like sort of server side things and Python and JavaScript things. And so machine learning is definitely a big part of my future. But I also want to get into robotics and combining all the things that I already know to do cool stuff and automate as many things as I possibly can. You know what I mean? What about Django with Nginx? So Nginx can absolutely connect with the Django project, which would probably actually connect with your GUnicorn service that's running. I actually have a whole series, a blog post as well as videos on my website, so cfe.sh, called Hello Linux, that shows you how to do this. And if I remember correctly, it does definitely use Nginx. That's so cfe.sh. Just go to my blog post on there or to the projects themselves, and you'll see that. That's a good question. For a job position, you're a junior developer. Most of the companies don't want junior devs, but how do a junior dev get experience in a company? Still looking for a backend position of backend. Okay, so experience is definitely the challenge that you'll have when you're starting out, always, right? So my recommendation is to constantly make projects, big or small, preferably a lot of big ones, but it doesn't have to be all of that. It could be a lot of really small ones with a couple really big ones. But undertake these projects as side projects on the weekends, whatever, and constantly release them on GitHub. Make them so anyone can just download them and use them, but make cool, interesting projects. That's one thing. And then the other thing is to actually look at all these job positions that you're looking at and try and get a sense of what challenges that company is actually having and why they're trying to hire somebody. Because as a participant in the software development arena, you're going to want to present ideas from time to time. Perhaps they won't take any of those ideas, but I think most companies want somebody who's not just a developer, but someone that's actually actively trying to solve problems within any organization. And building a bunch of projects is a good way to show that you can do that. But then building it specifically for different companies is potentially a good way to actually land a job with those companies. How about Django and the demand in the job market? Can you please name some company using Django? So the demand, I can't really speak as far as the demand is concerned. I think with software developers, there's a demand all across the board for all sorts of skill sets. To say that all you would ever do is Django is, I think, not going to be accurate ever. Like, you'll probably never get a job just doing Django. More than likely, you'll have to maybe do some other server-side things. at least, and potentially doing things like JavaScript and some sort of integrations with that. Maybe not all of it, but knowing some things with that. So some companies that use Django, Instagram, Pinterest, I think NASA might still use it. Zapier, like there's a lot of companies out there that use Django. Can we use Python to create HTML elements on the fly? I mean, use it to create boilerplate that helps and manipulate HTML using Python. This sounds like JavaScript, and I think there might be a way to write Python that writes JavaScript, if I remember correctly, and then that could actually do this, but I wouldn't recommend it. You should just use JavaScript if you're wanting to create HTML elements, because JavaScript runs in the browser, and it makes it possible and easy to do that. What do you do other than programming? I do a lot of things. I'm a father, first and foremost, so that's like my number one job, my favorite job. I have 2 young daughters, and we do a lot of fun things. I program, I learn, I'm constantly learning, trying to build projects on my own. And what I just advised just a moment ago of like getting better experience, it comes from building projects. That's what I do too. I like getting more experience, so I build a bunch of other projects. Yeah. Hopefully that helps. I like going on bike rides. I got an electric bike back there. You might be able to see it. I don't know. I really, really like electric bikes. It's really cool for a number of reasons, but one of them being like at any moment while you're biking, you can just do the throttle. And it's like, whoa, cool. I don't have to do that anymore. That's sweet. Is Python really good for native app development or future frameworks like Kiwi? Kiwi? Do you mean Kiwi? You probably mean Kiwi. I don't think Python is a great choice for mobile app development, personally. I don't think it's well suited to build mobile apps. I have yet to see a shining example of here's a big company that uses Python as a mobile app. Mainly because building GUIs or graphical user interface with Python is just not that great. Doing it with other things like JavaScript with React Native, or I've heard good things about Flutter. There's a lot of other options out there that are amazing for building mobile development, where Python can live on the server side and do a bunch of things with server. How hard is it to set up a asynchronous server gateway interface versus a web server gateway interface? Really, really easy. It's almost the same thing. But it also depends on where you're trying to set this up. But for the most part, it's really easy. What is your opinion on the best module out there for GraphQL with Django? Something that's actively maintained. So I don't actually use GraphQL that often because I don't have a lot of demands for it most of the time. I do get this question asked often. I think Graphene was one of them that I've used in the past, but I'm trying to think if Graphene is still actively maintained. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But that one was really popular maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So I would imagine that still might be the choice. I mean, I guess the question is like, what do you need GraphQL for? And maybe Django is not necessarily the right answer. That's sometimes possible. But like you might want to build a REST API framework instead, or use a different tool. Because I don't think GraphQL support with Django is like one of its strengths. Because I'm trying to think of it like when I would actually need GraphQL. It's really hard for me to give an answer for you for that one. I'm 23. You dropped out of university. You've been watching some coding tutorials for the last month, and you built some small projects. To advise you to go back to university. Well, I don't know, like, why'd you drop out of university? I don't know how to answer this for you, right? If it's something that you really want to do, then yeah, go back. Right? That's pretty simple. If you're doing it because you think you're wasting time and you're not getting enough done, then you probably wouldn't be asking this question. Like, you wouldn't be on this live stream if you don't have enough time to get the things you're trying to get done, which is why you dropped out. Like, that's why like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of school, right? They had other things that were just pulling them away. Going to class was taking them away from doing something amazing. I finished university. I would have dropped out if I had a bunch of other things going on. I just didn't. So university was a good way for me to navigate that personally. Do I think GraphQL is the path to take over and replace REST at some point in time in the future? No, I just got done with saying why it probably isn't. Thanks for the question. You're waiting for the next Django bootcamp. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to do another one. I mean, I'm glad that you're waiting. Thank you for that. But the problem with the bootcamp is when you code live and you make mistakes, especially if you're trying to push something, I can't just be like, okay, give me a minute. I'm gonna walk away for an hour and come back to it and then solve the problem. I do that a lot when I'm recording. So when I record, if I run into an error or an issue of some kind, it might be because I've been sitting there too long and I just need to walk away for a minute. So the way I actually make projects is not like if I was teaching a university course where I already have this material pretty dialed in and I'm just going over the material. I'm not doing that. I'm actually trying to create something from scratch the majority of the time. So I hit roadblocks while I'm doing the recording and I have to go back. But if there's a lot of demand for another bootcamp, maybe I'll end up doing one. I just don't see it, Semicolon. You got it. I like your name, by the way. Is Next.js best for server-side rendering of Django and React for a single-page SEO-friendly website? So any given URL on Django can be rendered to render React. So React doesn't have to be rendered server-side. That starts to add a little bit of complexity to your project. Next.js, if you're completely separating out Django as an API somewhere else, Next.js and React could work together to do the primary page as well. I don't actually tend to do that because Django is often going to remain my backbone. So I've had an Angular and Angular and Django site. I've had a React and Django site. I have a jQuery and Django site. I've had all of those things, but the key that stayed there was my backend. So Django's always been there. So one of the reasons that I haven't completely left to use something like Next.js and React is because the front end frameworks are the ones that always change. Like the way we build our front ends are changing way more rapidly than how we handle our back ends because it's maybe cooler to make the front end. That's what everyone sees and uses. So people that jump on your site and they're like, wow, you got such a cool site. They're not saying because it loaded quickly, they're saying because of some JavaScript interaction that's happening or some animations that are happening on your site. You know what I mean? Can we expect production level machine learning tutorials from you? Yes, at some point. Yes. And I'm assuming you mean production as in bringing a machine learning algorithm into production. That is absolutely something I'm going to do. I have a few things that are really in the pipeline prior to that may make it to YouTube, but will definitely be on my website. Best REST API, Flask or Django? It depends on what you are trying to do. This is always the answer, which is probably not fun for somebody who's asking this question. So Flask is great if you want to spin up something really quick. Django is better for having built-in authentication, session management, a lot of things out of the box Django has. So if I need users, especially if I need users and I need better authentication, I always just go to Django right away. But if I'm speaking of production and machine learning, if I'm serving a machine learning application, I probably just deploy a quick little Flask app and run it that way. Cool. Student from Udemy, you want me to make a course on FastAPI, please? Yes. So I just released, I think it's maybe still playing. I don't know. I literally just released a FastAPI and Airtable integration. So check that one out. It literally just happened 10 minutes ago. Thanks for the question. You asked it a few times. Can I become a developer without JavaScript? Yes. There's a lot of developers that don't touch JavaScript. There are Java developers that don't do JavaScript ever. But JavaScript, like Script Kitty says, JavaScript is easy and fun. You should try it, or just not give up on it. That's what I'd say, because I agree JavaScript can get complicated, especially older, pure versions of JavaScript, like what was it, I don't know, 5 or something. Older versions of JavaScript are a little complicated, but if you stick with it, you'll be happy about it, I think. What different features should a CRM system have? Content relation management or customer relations management, excuse me. I would log into a service that already does this well. Log into Salesforce and check that out. This is not something I've thought about or built in a long time. I think Django has some CRM systems, open source ones, so you could always take a look at their feature list and see if those things are good. Are you trying to build this one for a client? Are you building it for yourself? What are you trying to do here? Is using Django WebSockets in Windows good? Windows requires you to probably use Docker to run Redis. So it adds a layer of complexity. But you should be able to do sockets, not WebSockets, but regular sockets, Python sockets in Django just fine. In Windows just fine. But you don't necessarily need Django for that. So like, are you saying hosting on Windows? If that's the case, I would kind of stay away from that personally. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, let's not spam me on the questions, please. I didn't realize that you asked it like a lot. Wow. 30 days of JavaScript. It's coming. I still have to finish 30 days of Python. I have one video left, and I'm not actually sure what I should do. You know what I mean? Any ideas, you guys, for the 30th day of 30 days of Python? My original version of that, I think I made it a thank you day. Like I just said thank you and left. And I almost did it this time. 30 days of Python as it is right now already has probably 60 days worth, if not more, of what somebody could realistically do. I like to think that it's 30 days, but I think the vast majority of us aren't sitting down and watching a video and trying to figure out how it all works exactly. So rewatching it multiple times, to make things happen. So yeah. Hey, thank you. Thank you for commenting and coming to say hi. Appreciate it. Is Python good for mobile apps backend? Yes. If it lives on a server, then yes. If it's going to be on the mobile app, then probably not. Let's see. What features? Yeah, you already asked this one. How do I comment? I really need to have a moderator on here for some things. You know what I mean? Moderators would be good. Does college degree matter for getting a job? It depends on what job. If it's a software job, not necessarily, no. So yeah. Thanks. I'm glad that you've learned a lot from me. I'm glad I could help. How can you create a billing system in Django? There's a lot of different ways to do this. So I don't really have a short, concise advice for this. But you can look at a lot of the Django Stripe packages, look at their code, see what they did, and see how you might integrate that same concept with a different credit card processing company than Stripe. You got a new job in Django. Please make a new bootcamp for the Django REST framework or update the Django core concept course on Udemy. Thank you for the suggestions. I appreciate it. Not sure if I'm going to do another bootcamp, like I said a little bit ago, but more than likely what I would end up doing is another Django REST framework video, putting that somewhere. I haven't updated a lot of things on Udemy. I pretty much focus on my website and YouTube. Maybe I'll put some more stuff on Udemy, but I really, really like having, YouTube is not really restrictive at all. I can have people come to my website and we can do things there. So thanks for the suggestion. Hey, thank you. Wow. It made you a project manager. That's awesome. I love hearing that. What course or courses did you learn from so I can brag about you some more, Ram? Thank you. Python 3 and Django 2+ with Celery which broker, Redis or RabbitMQ? Which one is more fault tolerant? Fault tolerant. Well, I personally use Redis all the time. In my experience, Redis has been amazing. And I've also found that there are more managed Redis services on more hosts, right? So like Heroku definitely has one. I think it has several managed Redis services. So I end up using that. That being said, RabbitMQ is also mature. So they're both really good. I don't think this matters that much. I just typically use Redis myself. It's probably because I know Redis a little bit better. Like I can actually use Redis myself. I can do all the different commands. RabbitMQ, I haven't spent, I've only spent like a fraction of the time on there. Yeah. So a web server, and that also handles events from other microservices, how to approach using Django. So you basically have a bunch of microservices running, and you want to know how to actually handle all of the events in that microservice. Are you using something like Kubernetes to run this, or how are you actually running these microservices? How I would approach it is probably actually using Django to call all of those microservices to orchestrate these things. That being said, there are a number of tools out there that can do this as well, but there is a lot of vendor lock-in when you use tools that manage other microservices. This is something I like Django for. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm glad you like the studio setup. What camera do I use? I actually have a few different cameras, but the one that you see that's showing right now is a Sony A6500. It looks a lot like this. This is the Sony A6300. But I'm actually going to be getting a new lens for that Sony, so it keeps this same kind of frame. If you look at some of my other videos, the frame's a lot closer because I'm using a 35 millimeter lens, because I don't really know what I'm doing. I mean, I kind of do, but I kind of don't, in the sense I wanted this like sort of blurred background. But I just posted a video literally about this blurred background on my personal channel for Justin Mitchell. So I shared that on my channel somewhere in the community tab, I think. But this dark background, I really, really like. I mean, it's darker for you guys, but I'm hoping my next version, it'll be even darker, because I also got this cool lens filter for that to make it where the background is almost black, right? You don't even know I'm in my garage working on this stuff. But thank you for the comment. Appreciate it. What's your view on no code like bubble.io? No code's fascinating. I think that, like, I just did something on Airtable with an integration with Python. So it's like a low code solution. So I think this, right? I can't wait until there's an AI that can literally automate the things I want to automate. So it like kind of codes for me, right? And no code is almost that solution, except the thing I don't like about no code is this really strong vendor lock-in, right? So there's not something like an open source way for me to deploy a no code solution for my team yet, right? I really think that would be a good thing. Maybe bubble.io. I haven't used that one. I've mostly used Zapier and Airtable and a few of these other ones. So maybe I should check out Bubble. But I think the thing about no code is perhaps it's a gateway drug into actually writing code. So you start to think in terms of automations, and then you get frustrated that this like certain automation is not actually doing everything you need it to do. So then maybe that's your foray into actually writing code. The other side is the speed as to which a developer can implement automations because of no code tools, right? So Zapier is a good example of this. Is like, if I have a web application and I don't want to spend a week doing a certain kind of integration that Zapier definitely already has, I could just quickly use Zapier as a part of that workflow, test that that feature on my site, and through Zapier, sure, it's going to be a little bit expensive initially, but then through Zapier, that would do enough of the testing for me. So then now I can bring that service in-house do all of the exact integrations I want and then bump up the features and then also not be locked into a no-code solution. So I actually think it's really, really interesting. And we're going to see a lot of startups coming from no-code because that's where I came from. I came from a place of not knowing software, not knowing how to build software and wanting automations to happen. I wanted web applications and I worked with a bunch of different people, but eventually I decided I was going to learn myself. But the thing is, no code might like get to a point where it sort of bridges the gap between what people want from a project, like a marketer wants from a project, and what the actual hardware or the software that you need to make it happen. So I think it's actually really, really fascinating. And if I was looking for a job, I would consider one of the no code companies to work for and do a lot of their software in-house. And if you're looking to expand your skill set, you can also build tools yourself as a software developer for these no-code platforms because a lot of them don't have those tools yet, right? So they don't have all of the automations yet. They don't have everything built in. So it's something like that's also a pretty big opportunity, I'd say. It's a good question. This is like, I got to make a video on this. What do I think is better, Django or Node.js? They are not the same at all. It's not even a same comparison. It's like, what do I think is better, a chocolate chip cookie or a steak? Like, well, I like them both. They are both very different. That's probably not that fair of a comparison. But Node.js and Python are the ones that should be compared. Node.js is a runtime for JavaScript on your machine. So it's actually how you run JavaScript on your local machine outside of the browser. So the real comparison would be Django and something like Adonis.js or Flask and something like Express.js. Those are actually the better comparisons. But I think they're both great for what they do and for specific projects. I use both of them all the time. How can you start freelancing in Django? I just mentioned this about getting jobs, but there's a bunch of freelancing websites on there. And basically what I'd say is just charge the bare minimum you would work for and work your butt off. That's it. Will Deno beat Node and Django? I haven't used it. I think there's a lot of hype around it. We'll see. I don't know. Which database is the best to learn for web development? So there's two schools of thought here. There's a SQL database like a Postgres or MySQL. And then there's the NoSQL database like a MongoDB. I actually think you can use either one. So I wouldn't say either one is best to learn because every project is different and every project demands a different kind of database. All three of those are great to learn, at least a little bit. So if you know a little bit of all of them and then you start building projects on one of them, then you'll get better at that one database. So that probably doesn't answer your question in the way you wanted to hear it, but that's what I think. Hi, Django's great right now. Yeah, I agree. Can I make a video about how Django exactly works in actual big companies who use it? All we worked on are like rough projects and we don't know what a company expects. Yeah, so if you go into a company thinking that you already know what they do, like you're probably going to be in for a wake-up call, right? So like even if you have an idea of how a big company might work, I'm probably not the guy to ask, really, because I don't work for a big company. Right. So I'm not in the process management of these big companies that do like multiple teams that are all working on the same code base and do these major merges and stuff like that. I would look for a product manager of some kind that works at one of these big companies and ask them how they use it in their company. Because I have a bunch of ideas for it, but I don't think it'd be any use for you at this point. What is the future of Django / is Django becoming obsolete? Did you just copy and paste a Reddit post or Matt's at Just Django? I literally just talked about this 30 minutes ago. Django is not becoming obsolete, even if it's not being used less. Now, the thing is, there are so many projects that need to be automated in the world, right? There's so many of them. And not all of them are going to be well suited for Django, but a lot of them will be. Let's say even if it's 10% of all the things that need to be automated can be done through some sort of Python framework like Django, that is probably billions of projects, maybe even more than that. So to think that the number one Python web framework is becoming obsolete might almost argue is Python becoming obsolete. Certainly these things won't last forever, right? Because all of the core Django developers will eventually leave. But Django is incredibly stable. It has a really strong community, and it's constantly improving in a predictable cycle. So everyone kind of knows what's coming with Django. So I don't think it's becoming obsolete. That doesn't mean that it won't, but I just don't think that it necessarily will. Tech realms, am I ever going to move out of California? I've heard that a lot of Californians these days are shifting over to Texas due to high taxes and property prices. Hey, what's going on? Good to have you. Where are you from? I don't actually know that. So moving out of California. Now, my wife and I have had a lot of thoughts on what we're thinking about doing as far as the next few years and stuff like that. And we love California though. So like we're going to be spending a lot of time here no matter what. Most of our family's here. So as far as leaving here, I don't have a full answer for you yet. I think that living in somewhere else would be a huge adjustment, right? So California is great for so many things, and Texas has a lot of appeal to it. Washington State has a lot of appeal to it. Hawaii has a lot of appeal to it. There's a lot of really cool places in the U.S. So one might be like, oh, well, why don't we just bounce around and live in all of these places? I don't know. I do really like California, but we have given it some thought based off of the reasons you said too. It's pretty amazing because where I live in Southern California, like maybe let's say a half-acre place is probably going to be a half-acre house with, I don't know, 4 bedrooms would probably be $1 to $6 million. Seriously. Where that same in a lot of other places in the US would be a half-acre place would be like maybe 300,000 or 350,000 for roughly the same thing. Like that's 4 or 5 times as much. So definitely does factor into how we think about things. But, this goes back to like, do you need that big of a place? Do you just need somewhere to work and somewhere to be happy and healthy with your family? That's actually way higher on the list than moving somewhere. You know what I mean? So like we've even talked about, we should get an Airstream and just live in that. I do have 2 young daughters, so we should just travel around in an Airstream. That is something that, it's just like a trailer, basically, if you're not familiar with an Airstream. So that's something that we've talked about too. How about you? Are you moving to Texas, the tech realms? Should I use Django REST API or Django REST framework for native app development? Yes, I think that sounds awesome. You should definitely do that. Definitely do that. The Django REST framework. You're welcome. My vote for Redis matters a lot to you. Oh, cool. That's good to know. Best way to learn the Django REST framework with Celery and Redis. So Django REST framework doesn't need Celery or Redis. It can use those things, kind of, but the Django REST framework essentially is kind of like saying forms.py in Django, and does that use Celery and Redis? Well, sorta. It's more like, does Django use Celery and Redis? And that's the answer. So you'd want to learn these things separately. And I just released a course on my website called Time and Tasks 2 that would teach you pretty much anything you'll need to know about Celery and Redis with Django. There are a few other features that I don't necessarily cover, but it covers pretty much everything you'll need to know. And then my course called REST API will cover the Django REST framework in depth quite a bit. Airtable is only for hosting. No, Airtable is actually a cloud-based spreadsheet, right? So it's kind of like Google Sheets or Excel, but just another alternative offering that has a bunch of integrations to things that are pretty cool. So check out my Python Airtable integration thing if you want to see how to actually integrate it with Python. It's pretty sweet. Why people make a single page application but don't tell you about SEO or don't tell about SEO? What's your opinion on this? So why do people make single page applications and don't share about the downsides of using it with search engine optimization? Well, because that's not always your primary objective is search engine optimization. That's what I'll say. It's like if you're building a site specifically for search engine optimization, you would use very, very little JavaScript probably. A good example of this is Craigslist, right? How much JavaScript does that have on it? Probably very, very little, but it's still an incredibly effective site. And the SEO is bonkers on that thing. Yes. Depends on what you're building. Always. That is always the answer. Is it possible for you to work as a Django developer in America or like physically in America? Yeah, I'm sure it is. A company has to hire you and bring you over here and sponsor all that. So if you show that you can make things happen, then absolutely. But you can also work as a freelancer from Indonesia to companies here. So I'm going to be here in just a little bit longer. I had a long day of recording and my voice is getting a little hoarse. And I just wanted to answer some questions for you guys. And I think I got some down. I don't know. You tell me. What language am I most proficient in? English. I'm a dad, so I give a lot of dad jokes. I've been doing dad jokes long before I was a dad, though. Like I know Python and JavaScript the best. I probably know Python a bit more than JavaScript, although I've been spending a lot of time on JavaScript, so I use JavaScript a lot. Those are like my go-tos. Those are my primary ones. You have a doubt. So when you use filter.qs and filters of Python, I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Can we expect a tutorial series on the Django REST framework using Django 3? Yeah, once I actually start doing more Django 3 stuff, I will have Django REST framework things in there and release that as well. What do I do full time? I teach people how to code and answer questions. I also teach myself how to code, but that's what I do full time for a living. Other than that, I am a full-time dad. That is also what I do full time. That doesn't mean that my wife is the one who's with them most of the time. So it's not like I'm like a single dad and only doing that. My wife is really the one that's with them all the time. That's like when you become a parent, you are automatically a full-time parent, no matter what. Can I tell you how to put a Django application on the Play Store or App Store? You don't bundle Django into native applications. Django is a web framework. It's made for the internet. You don't bundle them on those kinds of applications. You probably can, or you definitely can, but it's not very common. So to do that, you'd use py installer to bundle Django into one of those binaries, but I do not recommend doing that. You've been following my interest on AI, and you've been learning that I've been pushing on learning machine learning. Absolutely, but not mashing learning. Machine, were you being funny? Maybe you're being funny. I feel like you probably were. So you taught on TensorBoard or TensorFlow specifically, and integrated if you can. Yeah. So I think you're asking about TensorFlow, not TensorBoard. TensorBoard is a feature of TensorFlow, and can you integrate it with Django? Yes, you can. I actually think that TensorFlow is a little bit more complicated than just using something like Keras, especially if you're coming from a Python background. So make a video on Learn Django by making a YouTube clone. That's funny. Thanks for the suggestion. Most of the people here are from India. I think you are right. Oh, here, Thailand. Oh, proven wrong with the next one. You're using the Django framework. Awesome. I taught you a lot. Cool. I will continue to teach. Absolutely. Okay, guys. So I'm going to be hopping off here in just a moment. So if we have any more questions or comments, let me know. Like I said, I haven't done one of these Q&As in a little while, and it probably wasn't the greatest time. And given that I literally just released a 2-hour project, YouTube probably doesn't like you releasing something like that and then going live shortly after it. Do I prefer Flask to Django? You feel Flask is simpler. Flask is much simpler than Django, but I much prefer Django for the vast majority of my projects because Django has an opinion about many features that are critical to web applications, many features that are critical to user authentication, to security. Django, actually the team puts forth their opinion on how to actually execute those things. Flask has a bunch of ideas about it, but they don't have it built into the framework, so they're not as opinionated to it. So I like Django a lot, but Flask is also really good. So is FastAPI. So is AIO HTTP. There's a lot of them. Hey, from Russia. Nice. You learned Django from my courses a few years ago, and now you create SBA apps for small and medium-sized business. Hey, that's awesome. Really, really cool. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. I love hearing these stories. Really do. I'm curious to see your website and all that. So tweet it to me if you haven't already on Twitter. Are you guys using Clubhouse? Is anyone on there? I'm definitely on there now. Look me up, Justin Mitchell. Probably worth checking out. When are you finishing 30 Days of Python? When I have a really good idea for the 30th day. I think I have one, but once I have that, then I'll do that one. You learn Python 5 months, Django 2 months, 1 month, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, just learn basic. Apply to a job or learn more. What I would say is pick a project you want to solve, go solve that project. If you can solve it on your own, then you're probably ready for a job. Have I made IoT applications using Django and MQTT? I have made some IoT applications, and I have not used MQTT for it, although you definitely could. This is a really good idea. But IoT stuff I haven't spent much time with in a while. But I definitely want to. It's just there's so many things that we can do. You know what I mean? Are you taking care of your health while working from home 24/7? Yes. Thank you for the concern. I appreciate it. Yeah, as best I can. I think one of the tricky things is COVID, right? So I can't go to the gym. Things have been locked down. Have so much stuff, like all the gym equipment and stuff like that. I don't have it at home, so I didn't buy it. But I do have a bike, and I take that bike out fairly often with my kids. I play with my kids all the time. Playing with your kids is really good for your health. If you have kids, it's there's so much joy, but then you also have to run around and throw them in the air and do all the fun stuff, So absolutely. Are you taking care of your health? I don't think taking care of your health and where you actually spend your time working are joined, You wish you could move to Texas or any other state for that matter yet, but unfortunately you're not an American citizen yet. Oh, okay. So you want to start a business and get the American PR via the EB-5 route. Oh, okay. The American PR. I feel like I should know what that acronym stands for, but I'm going blank on it right now. Entrepreneurship, that's investor Vita, super expensive. Plus, it realistically take you 8 years to become a citizen. Even if I had the money right now, there's about a 5-year wait or so. Yeah, I mean, unless you. For Indian citizens. So you're in India, I'm assuming. Yeah, I think that one of the other things is you can come to school here and get a sponsorship that way and just not go to school. I don't know how that's working right now with COVID at all, but you could just go here and for 6 months, just hustle and try and find a way to stay here, whether that's getting married or I don't know. There's probably a way if you really want to make it happen. There's no way it's going to take 8 years, right? No way. I think you can make it happen. Thank you. Anyway, I want to thank you. I become a software developer without a degree. I use your tutorial to make a portfolio and do some projects for a company. Thanks, Justin. Hey, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. That's awesome to hear and awesome work. Just keep it up. It's just better and better every day, just little by little. Django and JavaScript the best combo, or do I need to focus in JavaScript only? Every project is different. Django was like my real big pull into building all kinds of web applications. So it's probably why I'm very biased towards Django. But JavaScript and Python are both incredibly important. Django versus Node.js. I just talked about this. Rewind it 20 minutes ago. How to use filters in Django. Filters in the Django query sets. I talk about this a lot. Otherwise, server sent event. Is it a good idea? Or is there something better for updating the client with things that the server knows now? So WebSockets are a way that your server can communicate with your client without your client initiating to talk to your server. It's like a bound connection. It's a two-way connection. So you go back and forth between the two. So WebSockets is a really good way to do these things. So no polling. Why the change in the CFE logo? I wanted something that represented an individual joining a community that is incredibly adaptable. And the wolf was one of those things. Also, I think the old logo, it was a navigational, it looked too much like navigation, right? It looked like a menu icon. And it was just something that I wanted to update and change to having a little bit more meaning than just helping you navigate through the world of code, but to have that combination of a wolf itself is like very adaptable to all sorts of situations, but then they also work in a wolf pack. So thus the new logo as a wolf. So yeah, so we are coding wolves, if you will. And we're also actively, aggressively trying as a group to get better at the things that we want to get better at. I'm not sure if wolves are necessarily like that exactly, but you get the metaphor, I think. Yeah. So is it important to participate in competitive programming? No, it is not. Because competitive programming is not necessarily how you're going to solve problems in the real world. You definitely can learn a lot in competitive programming for sure, but that's not how a lot of the real world problems get solved. So I don't know if I would necessarily do that. Your savings are running out and you don't want to stop learning. What do I do? Well, get a job so you don't, have to live on the streets or something. But so you can pay bills and then learn otherwise. Stop being on YouTube. Stop being on Instagram. Sleep 6 hours and learn for 2 instead of sleeping 8 hours. There's definitely, if there's a will, there's a way. You bought my course, Python e-commerce, a few weeks ago. You used Django 1.11, whereas now the mainstream of Django ended April of 2020. What should you do? Oh no. Python Django 1.8 isn't that much different than the Django that's out right now. There are differences for sure, but if you learn the Django 1.8, so yes, 1.8 is long before Django 1.11. If you learned 1.8 and then upgraded to 1.10 and then 1.11 and then 2.0, 2.2, if you did that upgrade process, you will learn so much, but you will also see that it's actually not that much different. So you can totally keep going with Django 1.11. Flask for learning web backend works, but Django to make life much easier. Yeah, sure. 10 months. Yeah, we just talked about this. Okay, guys, you just had your first job as a Django developer. Thank you for your words of encouragement over the years and your amazing videos, tutorials, and courses. You're welcome. Way to put in the work and get the effort and go get your job. That's awesome. Good for you. Congratulations. Thanks for sharing as well. I appreciate it. Cool, guys. So thanks so much for coming out to this live one. As usual, I plan to do 30 minutes, and you guys asked me a bunch of good questions, so it turned into yet another hour. So thanks for watching, and I will chat with you guys later. Have a good night. Have a good day. See you soon.